Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys are spending a great Saturday. It's an honor to be here at Morehouse AUC, a place that has shaped leaders, thinkers, and also freedom fighters. People understood that the knowledge is not just about intellect, but about responsibility. So my name is Gaetan Dofanzo. I am engineering by profession, um, social justice advocate, and I'm going to be your host for this weekend again of another episode of Congo Unfiltered, a platform that really amplifies African voices, Congolese voices, exposes the global injustice rooted in the exploitation of the Congo. Today, we're going to have a lot to talk about, and we're going to have speakers with the S. But now I know you all have been, busy with life, um, and we're all here in a busy homecoming weekends, and I'm in Atlanta. So I want to thank the guests that are here for choosing to spend this time not just celebrating but also learning, reflecting, and questioning. Because at Morehouse, truth has always been more than an idea. I believe, right? Like it's a mission. And today, we are here to roll into the truth to talk about the Congo, not as a distant story, but as part of the same struggle for justice, dignity, freedom that really connects us all. When people talk about the Congo, they often mention minerals, cobalt, coltan, gold, the building blocks of our phone that builds our phone, cars, and even the green energy for the future. But behind every mineral, there is a human story. Stories that show resilience of women rebuilding community after war, youth demanding accountability, or even ordinary people refusing to give up their humanity in the face of unimaginable suffering. So this conversation isn't just about Africa. It's not just about the Congo. It is about a global system that we are part of. It's about the economic, the political, the racial intersect that define who profits, who pays the price. And it's about what it means as students, as engineers, as scholars, and as future leaders to use our voice, our fields to study justice, to educate, to amplify, to organize, and to mobilize. So we're gonna dive into discussion real quick, and I encourage y'all to ask questions, even those online watching us, to ask questions in the comment section. We will make sure to read them and answer them. But what does solidarity really look like when the world's wealth depends on someone else's suffering? And then Black people can actually um, uh, empathize because they have built this country. Black people have built this country, and you see the wealth that this country has, and how everything that this country knows is being built on the back of Black people. But how are Black people today treated? It is the same story as Congo. And so it's not just like I was saying, a distant story. It's not just history, but it's a mirror. And if we listen closely, we will hear not just um, the cry of people, but the truth calling for all of us to act. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on stage. They're actually here physically with me, and my guests, and welcome them honestly for the courage and for you know the fact that they're here in person and they are able to discuss and have this conversation. So I'm gonna have my guests over here. So we're gonna start with you, Professor Samurai. If you can introduce yourself.
Sir,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for having me on. Having us. We really admire your work with Friends of the Congo. Can you hear me okay? Okay, that's good. My name is Dr. Samori Livingston, and I'm an associate professor of Africana Studies and a member of Friends of the I say that because I started part time, but full time is like 20.
Let's see. Yeah, and next.
Hi, Dylan. My name is Andre Sarah. I'm a Morehouse freshman, C-Tils major from Morehouse, Louisiana. I am a student of Miss Livingston's African American Studies Experience FYE class, and I'm really excited to be here and learn more about the Congo as it pertains to our curriculum.
Hello, my name is Kyle Hegwood. I'm a Morehouse freshman here, and I'm a Chinese Studies major from Washington, D.C. I'm also a student in Dr. Livingston's African American Experience. I'm a student of Attain Knowledge.
So I have to speak up a little bit. Yeah, but that's y'all can hear him, right? No?
They couldn't catch your intro, so
Really?
yes.
Oh.
My apologies.
That's all right. Okay. Dr.
If you can also speak up so that that people can hear. Yeah.
All right, Dr. Samori Livingston. I'm an associate professor of Africana Studies here at Morehouse College in my 23rd year and my 11th year with Friends of the Congo. And joining Friends of the Congo has been the best decision I've made besides having my 3 daughters, of course, with your mother, of course. Obvious.
I'm sorry that we're gonna have to go again. Go ahead. Yeah.
My name is Andre Sarah. I am a Morehouse freshman, C-Tils major from Louisiana. I am a student of Miss Livingston's African American Studies FYE class, and I'm excited to be here to learn more about the Congo as pertains to African American Studies.
My name is Kyle Hegwood. I am a Chinese Studies major here at Morehouse. I'm a freshman, and I'm also in Dr. Livingston's African American First Year Experience class. Now I'm ready to obtain more information pertaining to the culture.
Yeah.
Good day, Baba Wali. I'm a Morehouse alum, 2002. Here to I'm a businessman in the community. Been an entrepreneur since leaving school, and having family, and also here to gain knowledge. Glad to be sitting in such a great company, and kind of broaden our understanding. Really looking into the tech field in the future, having some challenges, understanding how to get into the green energy field or push things that I believe in, while understanding that the resources that are these technologies are built upon are coming really from a bloody place, you know. So yeah, that's something that we can do. How to find out how we can equitably and directly, do the things that we need to do without the suffering that's inherent based on the systems that are currently set up, unfair, exchange and exploitation, thievery, and getting to a space where we can communicate directly with, our brothers abroad and sisters abroad, and hopefully set some systems up that allow for that to occur.
Yeah, right on. And my first question from the get-go is to kind of like understand that relationship that Morehouse College has with Africa, because I've heard a lot in this introduction, African studies. What was the necessity, in your point of view, of having an African studies in the U.S., right? And what is also the history or the connection between Morehouse and the African people, particularly the Congolese people? If you can kind of like give us like a overview of African studies and what he does, and the necessity of it.
Absolutely. So I'm gonna try to give you the short version and then connect to a longer version and still keep it relatively brief. It'll be a struggle, but I'm gonna do it. You could say that Africana Studies started at Morehouse in 1969, and this was a part of a wave, part of the Black Power movement for the establishment of Black studies, learning more about our culture, our history. All of that really kicked off, unfortunately, with the deaths of Malcolm X, which catalyzed Huey Newton and Bobby Seale to form the Black Panthers. And it really also, there's a radicalizing effect that Malcolm had on the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Our good brother Rich Benson wrote a book called Fighting for Our Place in the Sun, Malcolm X and the Radicalization of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. So there's that piece, and it's never just one person, because there are so many other men and women who, especially sisters, we don't tell the stories of the sisters enough, but Shirley Graham Du Bois, who married W.B. Du Bois, really reinvigorated his connection with Africa in many ways. You know, people like Vicky Amagarva. So try to keep it concise. My students are here, they'll tell you, like, oh, he's bringing in other information, because there's always more information. So there's the short chronology, 68, 69. And again, when Dr. King is assassinated, it triggers something in Black students here in the AUC, the Atlanta University Center. And much of that largely is communicated in what we call, some people say, the Morehouse Revolution in 1969. I have a problem with that. I'm doing a research project with my good brother, Dr. Worth Hayes, and we're clear that the Morehouse Revolution of 1969 to establish Black studies didn't actually start at Morehouse. It started at Spelman with the sisters, Civ sisters, Sisters of Blackness, and Morris Brown, and Morehouse is a part of that. So Morehouse gets the credit, the name, but Morris Brown, Spelman College, especially Spelman, they were really deeply involved in that fight for more African consciousness. The longer part of the story, and we actually move forward in time to about 1984, Morehouse helps to host with what is known as the Bennu study group of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations, ASCAP. 1984, they host the first Nile Valley Conference. That brings together about over 20 scholars who are doing research on Africa. The following year, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, comes to Morehouse College, Senegalese physicist and sociologist and historian, and he helps to build really this very powerful movement. One of those people who he mentored and inspired was Dr. Charles Finch. Dr. Charles Finch I consider him the honor for him to be one of my babas, one of my jegnas, and he's very, very responsible for keeping that spirit of connection with Africa alive. At Morehouse, we founded our Africana Studies program around 1994 under Dr. Marcellus Barksdale. I took over from him in 2013, and we've been fighting to have a more African-centered curriculum from that point. And I think a high point for me was joining Friends of the Congo, traveling to Africa in different years, 2000, 2012, and going to Congo in the year 2014. Changed my life, because you can literally see what folks were talking about in terms of Africa being like the Garden of Eden in many ways. Clean air, clean water, and you can understand why it's hard to get the Chinese and Europeans and Americans, their corporations, out of there, because it is literally vibrant with energy, and that's human energy, but it's also cultural energy. So my main thing, what I tell my students, in Congo and in Africa, the resources are important in terms of what these corporations have done and in terms of colonialism, but the human capital, the human cultures that we've created have created the basis of human civilizations. We need to reorient toward that and could reconnect with that spirit of African civilizations and really dedicate. There shouldn't be a single college, HBCU, that doesn't have an Africana Studies program or major. And we're trying to do what we can do to make sure that our students get the best education, because it's not a limit. It's not like you're saying just like, teaching a doc, you're teaching all this Black stuff. This is human civilization. There's no civilization on the planet without this African-centered information. And I'm going to be dropping books. Dr. Charles Finch, his book, 10,000-Year History of the Nile Valley Civilizations, he says that Congo and the African Great Lakes region is what he calls the placenta lands. It's the womb out of which the first two civilizations that we record in Africa were birthed from. And the Nile Valley corridor is almost like that birthing canal. So Kemet and Kush, their civilizations descend out of that. The genetic information, the genetic research shows this. Lots of people are being surprised. You look at 23andMe, and they're sending messages. Oh, you share the patrilineal line with Ramses III.
Interesting.
Okay,
You got it. Yeah. So you're not the only one. I got that same message. I thought it was just me. I was like, I've been studying this stuff as Ramses. He's been talking. No, it's that lineage. That lineage is there. That lineage is there. So to me, this is really kind of like reintroducing students to family history, but also world history. That's the shortest answer I can give you. There's more to it. And we've got to say that Black Studies didn't start at PWIs, didn't start at San Francisco State University, and then in Illinois and Harvard and Yale. It started at HBCUs first. Dr. W.B. Du Bois, back in 1896 to 1897, coming forward. William Leo Hansberry at Strait College, what will become Dillard University. Hansberry said we need to set up Black Studies as a department, a major, and a movement. So even the sense of social consciousness goes back to like the 1920s. And keep moving forward. Lorenzo Dow Turner and his work connected with Gullah culture and connecting that to African cultures. So the work we're doing is not just academic. We're literally trying to reconnect ourselves back into human history, because this country has been trying to dehumanize us since 1526, the actual date where we were first brought to this country. Not 1619, but 1526. So the first book that I'm writing is actually on that 1526 episode, as a way of all African people thinking about that pivotal year.
Yeah.
Almost pause right there.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, because when you think about even the way Pan-Africanism was born, it was literally out of the idea of solidarity, like how can Black people can organize and mobilize. This idea that what we are going through as individual seems to be different, but they are all connected. So I would like to know, maybe from a student perspective, and then you were saying that you went to Morehouse before, but from a student perspective, what is, I would say, the importance of taking a class that talks about a country in Africa that you have never been to, a culture that you don't know? Like, what is the importance of you when you register for the class, except that it was, besides the fact that it was probably mandatory, but what's the importance of being actually, because no one forces you to read the books. No one forces you to be an A student or to do your homework. You could just get a CB and that's it. But what makes you to actually learn and wanting to understand more and take the different step into showing that when it comes to justice, that's also something that you have to do as a person, as a Black person here in America. So I want to have the student perspective of having, to be involved. Maybe I'll start with you.
From the perspective of someone who went through the Morehouse process, and was here taking classes that I didn't have to take, took classes that I was inspired to take, or I was, really kind of had students in the history department when I was in the history major telling me that I want to know these things, and taking classes like the history of Marcus Garvey, and starting to really see what Pan-Africanism was, looking at the Du Bois-Garvey conflict, and trying to see, well, how can we do better? What is it that caused Malcolm and Martin to disagree? Where are our shared commonalities? If you would, how is it that I can sit across from one of my brothers and have a discussion and not despise them? How can I find a commonality? And so through the African Studies Department, through studying African literature, Brother Scales and Dr. Young and Dr. Kaba, I really got into a space, Mario Young, but there's just so many spaces where I could sit and say, wow, I didn't even know that happened. I didn't even know that period of history existed. I didn't know about the Stoner Rebellion. I didn't know that there was resistance throughout our period of captivity. And I also didn't know that we had conversations with the indigenous populations. I didn't know that we were here prior to Columbus. And you studying Van Sertima, and you're seeing, then you can go here to the mountains in Georgia and see artifacts that show our conversations with this land from Chicago down to the bayou, and you start to say, wow, all this can be hidden in plain sight. If there are mounds here in Macon, Georgia, if there are mounds here, if there's communities that existed here that we didn't know about, and there's these cultures, these Gullah cultures that we're able to drive 4 hours to the coast, and you have Blackbeard Sound, Blackbeard the pirate. You hear about it and you know these stories, but you don't really get this information until you sit down and someone says, hey, when you're taking this boat to this island of Black people who got their freedom by running off into the woods, right? On the Sapelo Islands, there's an island called Blackbeard for pirates. You start looking into these things and find out about the cowboys. Then you start finding out about ships, and you start to see, well, how can this connect me to where I come from? When we sat down with Dr. Finch, when I was in school, he said, you need to know these things. Studying Dr. Diop, I said, I want to go to Senegal and see the university. I want to see why this man who said these things. I think I've read Civilization and Barbarism by Diop. I think I had to read that book 5 times. I used to read, sometimes I'd read a page 3 times just to get, because he writes so scientifically, right? He writes so much. I had to take books next to books before the internet, and just to get, my dictionary and all these books, just to figure out what he's saying in the page. My physics books, he's talking about things that, is forcing you into a consciousness that initially it's how we thought. We thought, collectively I could go talk to you and ask you a question. If I don't know something, I can come sit down with you, or I can go sit down with one of the mothers or the grandmothers and get information that I didn't have. And so what I found out being a student and studying the history and seeing the connections was that I could see across the table. I could disagree and say, I understand your perspective, because we did that already. We did that 100 years ago. We disagreed in public, and we fought so hard that we didn't get where we were supposed to go. And so with Garvey and Du Bois, I said, well, Du Bois found out later on that, maybe we didn't have so much to fight about. Maybe I was trying to do something early on in my life that I figure out later on I shouldn't have been doing, right? And so we find out through studies like, hey, maybe I should take more time to see the other side of my brother's mind. I need to see the other side of my sister's mind so that I don't waste time battling within, which one of the easiest methods to keep people from moving forward is divide and conquer. And so to not see what's happening in the Congo as something that has happened here, the utter the depopulation, the murder, the mayhem, the rape. I wind up having the opportunity, and initially a sad opportunity, to live on an indigenous reservation in Arizona, on the Navajo reservation. And I found out that you can see the connections if you look at the techniques. I found young men who were taken from their homes, 17-year-old young Navajo brothers that were taken from their homes and taken to Catholic schools. Their hair was cut. They weren't able to speak their language. They were separated from their culture, and their humanity was removed until they ran away. And I'm talking to young men, and I'm saying, he said, I had to run away back into this valley. It was like a space called Kinshasa. They had to run away back to their grandmother's home, who was a sheep farmer. She grew corn down by the Hopi ruins at the bottom of a space called Kinshasa. And I realized, I said, wow, that story sounds very familiar, right? When I talked to my grandfather, who was a Black indigenous who was on a reservation in Virginia in the 1940s, my grandfather, Julius Grant, he was born on a reservation, and they were given dirty water. Both him and his brother passed in the 30s from the water pollution. From we know it now when we go and see what's happening in the Congo. When you're poisoning the rivers and the lakes, you're poisoning the water supply, the rapes and the kidnappings and the displacement. It's common themes that are constantly reused. But if we don't look, we don't see the spiral of history. We'll think these are new things, and we'll think, oh, that's disconnected. That's happening over here. I got my car, I got my phone. I can just go about my daily life, not knowing that this is spiraling back around. So then, when we get hit with the tariffs, and we get hit with the joblessness, and we get hit with the layoffs, and oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to us. Now we can't scale it and say we know what's happening in the Congo is scalar so much worse than what we're experiencing and our comforts that we have here. But
Yeah.
to understand and to see the cycle and say, hey, when I do go down to Southwest Atlanta, when I do go into these reservations, when I do go into these neighborhoods, if I go to Detroit, if I go to Patterson, New Jersey, or if I go to South Central Los Angeles, I'll see the similar, I'll see the displacement, I'll see the loss, I'll see the murder, I'll see the mayhem. And, when we live in cities and countries where we might have murder rates in the thousands, and then we say, oh, well, that's just happening because people are violent. But then you look, well, what is being taken? What do they want here? And we call it gentrification, what we call it, a movement of people off their land, off of their resources to facilitate the growth of a corporate structure that benefits from us not being able to access our wealth, right? And so once we start to look and say, hey, well, what can I do differently if I don't take this time to see where I'm connected?
Yeah.
I'm going to keep disconnecting until someone goes and says, well, you can't see what I'm doing over here. You can't see what I'm doing over here. You guys are all separated. So I can continue to do these things to all these people anywhere that I go. And I think one of the first places that I saw it when I started to see the kind of Euro idea, like when the English would go to the Irish. And it didn't click on me till I started studying peasantry. When I was young and I studied that because we're forced to see that. But we're taught that peasants are just like these happy people that are kind of going around the castle and kind of doing their thing. We didn't see the slop and the murder and the rape that was happening to the Irish and to English themselves, what they were doing to themselves. So if you're willing to do that to your sister or your mother or your cousin, what happens when you see someone that you can say is the other, which is what Remember said. We look at the other and say, oh, they're separate. That's a totally different person. So then it only becomes exponentially worse. Right.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's when we start to look at and say, well, what happens when they can look and go to the Congo and say, well, no one sees us up here. No one's watching us. We've already killed the moon, but we've done these things. No one's paid attention. No one said much. So can we continue to do this? We get into the millions, and then people are starting to say, well, what's going on? This has been happening for 20, what longer? And then people start to understand. So the Friends of the Congo, when Brother Kwame start telling people, these things have been happening. You just haven't been paying attention. So we start to look and then look across Africa in general. West Africa, North Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa, and see these things continue to happen, and they happen in isolation because we're not paying attention to the fact that we've experienced these things and didn't pay attention to when they happened to us.
And just to jump into what you've been saying, because I think there is truth to what you said, because particularly as Black people, Black pigmentation, what is the psychology behind when you look at folks that look like you being killed and then you don't say anything?
We've been desensitized. We came through the 80s watching murder on TV as a thing. I'm born in a place where I've had two cousins killed on the same corner. Two of my cousins were killed on one corner in East Orange, New Jersey. My cousin, their mother moved to Jacksonville, Florida, right? That was safe for her to move out of Patterson to Jacksonville was safe for her. But we, even in our family, don't always look to say, well, dang, how tragic is that we lost these two young men on that same block and no one did anything. Mm-hmm. We're so used to seeing it. We're so used to experiencing death as a way of life, even just off of television, that when someone tells us something, or we might see it as a soundbite, we don't take it in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add in too. So we are desensitized, but I think it's too, like, there are like systems that are set up that actually make the destruction of Black life profitable.
Yes.
And if it's in Congo, one of the things that I'm always communicating with students in the class is that you have to work harder to actually make the connections, to see those connections. Right. So our cell phones, the coltan, the tantalum, all these different rare earths and minerals that are going in there, like, we're benefiting from this, but it's like this. It's like it's distant.
Right.
So
but it's in our pocket.
But it's right there.
Yes.
It's right there.
It's right there.
It's distant, but it's like right here, like literally in the terms of technology that we're using. So it is. I think it is a consciousness thing, but I always tell my students too, you have to like actually separate. You have to forcefully separate your consciousness from the consciousness of the system, right, that actually is based on the theft of Native American land, killing Native Americans, stealing 12 million Africans, bringing them over here to America. Almost half of those Africans coming from Congo and Angola. And to me, that connection is like largely responsible for like our culture.
Right.
But we have the possibility of actually seeing the continuity and the positives that we brought with us from that African culture.
Right.
Yeah.
We got it. I was benefit when I was in Morehouse. I had the benefit of studying an African Brazilian martial art, Capoeira Angola. And so coming from that West Central African space, we started to understand the spiritual systems. And hey, this is something that can benefit me, not just physically, but my mind. I can see how I can work with a brother and I can train without hurting someone. I can study the forms of animals that I can experience an extra space in my own self that I can transcend something by doing something that's been done for thousands of years. Movement that follows a natural order. And so we started to look, and so we could start seeing the connections, but we still, and this is me saying this personally, we're still kept in the dark. A lot of times to the other side of things. We're still, and it's important to study the positive. When I was in Senegal, I studied the positive, I studied the positive, but I think at times we can become so overwhelmed with what's happening. So what can we do? I think those are the questions that I have.
Yeah.
Is how can we then make those changes? How can I put this down?
Mm-hmm.
How can I be more conscious of what's happening close to me? How can I put this down? This becomes less important. We need to wait 10 years till we can have a fair and equitable conversation with our brothers and sisters across the ocean so that we're not involved in, because we call it blood diamonds when it was diamonds, right? Don't wear those on your neck.
Yeah.
But when it's in the phone, Apple, there's no requirement for them to have anything said about where they're getting this stuff.
I want to make sure that the students also, the other two students also speak. But yes, your perspective into like immersing yourself into the African studies, like what do you think about you as someone who grew up here and then you hear about something that is happening overseas in Africa and then you take the class, then what? Maybe with you? You can come closer if you don't bite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So coming from DC, it's majority Black, so I'm very used to like the semi. I'm very used to like seeing my people all around me. My school is relatively diverse, people of all kinds of cultures. So I kind of grew up aware of racism, but I wouldn't really see racism besides on my phone or like through the news and things like that. It was very distant. And coming to Morehouse, I wanted to become more aware of the racial aspect of, I don't know that word, but
institutionalized aspect, I think, of racism, because you were surrounded by Black people, so your view or your understanding of racism was completely different. So you had to look at that holistically. Is that what you're saying? So then you take Africana studies. Then what was motivation? Like, why did you take that class, and how that has been affecting or changing the way you even see the world?
Okay, so this new Africana studies is a first year experience of a private class. So although I didn't specifically choose it, I'm still learning a lot of information from this class. Like, I knew that Africans were very influential to the world, but I didn't know the like specifics. Like, I didn't know we created math and writing and all that. We really educated, we really started a lot of things that really isn't talked about in high school and all that. And that's something that you can only really seek out in an Africana studies class. And I think that's a lot of information for me to learn.
But I'm really curious about what you said, that you from DC, which is predominantly Black, and then that you didn't really experience racism, that you thought that was distance. And the way I process it, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that you never looked at racism as a systemic, as a system, right? Like, because for you, it's like something that you experience. So you didn't see, what I guess, what was your opinion about income disparity, for example, or the way healthcare is, or the way the neighborhood that you grew up in is versus to a predominantly white neighborhood, or the way the police treat people versus other places? Um, like, yeah, what was your experience?
Okay. So growing up, my mom has given me a very, very like we're definitely very financially stable, but she has also given me the knowledge, given me the information of what her life was like when she was growing up. The income disparity, being in a single parent household with just my grandmother. She told me about all of the, because my grandmother is half white, half black. She told me about all the racial challenges that my grandmother would face. So I was definitely aware of racism, but it seemed distant, like I said before. So I'm not sure what I was trying to say. That's what I want.
No, no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
I think too, one of the things that we have to really challenge like our students today, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, is that, you know, like our personal stories are actually they connect to larger patterns.
Mm.
So when, you know, I shared with you guys that my grandmother is half white, but she would correct anybody. She told me, like, don't call me half. I'm I'm human and I'm black, because she recognized that blackness is a consciousness. It's not just like this racist system that was set up based upon, you know, this hierarchical system of the so-called races and stuff, you know, when in fact it's just the human race, the human species. And I think that's true. It helps if we are more precise with our language. Race, that's something that white people have been talking about for a long time. But one species is, now we have different cultures, different civilizations, and that's to me where Shape on the Joke. I was bringing up books, you know,
Yeah.
bring up books. Shape on the Joke toward the African Renaissance. He talked about the need to rebuild our civilization. So I was so glad to hear that you actually visited Shape on the Joke University.
Yeah, he inspired me to be a scholar.
Yeah.
You know, I started reading his books when I was 15 years old, and again, it just was a really difficult thing for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took me a lot to really integrate his writings into my mind, because it was so much studying I had to do just to get through the page.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so it reminded me, you know, when I decided to go to Morehouse, part of my mission was that I need to know more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want to know more. I need to learn how to learn, and I need to learn how to integrate this information into myself, because if it takes me this long to get through, and I didn't know at that time, right? I would read up. I was an avid reader, but when I got to that, to him, and I think I got to one of his books. One of my cousins said, "Here, read this."
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that big of a book. You know, even some of his smaller books. You know,
But yeah,
but he forces you to understand the connections. And when he tells you that this started here, it did not. You know, Egypt was a mouthpiece,
Mhm.
not the birthplace of African culture and civilization. It starts down in southern and central Africa. You need to come south and then go up the Nile. You know, so we really got the understanding, but we still, again, connecting it. When you go and see and experience the culture, then you start to know, oh, I am welcome here.
Yeah.
There's love here.
Yeah.
It's not what we've been told. It's not. This is not.
There's no place on the African continent that I've visited where I've ever had an experience of people saying that they don't want like black people from the diaspora, African Americans to come.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Right. No, no.
Completely agreeing with you.
Yeah,
You know, that's not to say it's there's not tension sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's because of what I would call socio-political factors,
Right.
as opposed to like folks. Actually, most people. The only place I've been, Ghana, Congo, Rwanda, Egypt, and all of them. I'm talking about the black folks.
Right.
They're like, come on in,
Come in.
come in, come in. So one of the things I do challenge my students to think also is to develop, like they have to write. I don't know if y'all have to write your cultural autobiography back when you were at Morehouse, but I have them write their personal family story. It's like, well, how do you show up here in 2025?
Mm.
Who sent you? Whose people are you? What's
Yeah.
your family story? Because it's important for us to understand that for all the connections, like, you know, we talk about Walter Rodney's Grounders with My Brothers and Pan-Africanism, how that has to be not just an idea, but a movement. But then you have to bring something to the table so that you actually are sharing with you meet with your folks in the Caribbean, on the continent of Africa, and for that matter, any place in the world, that you know your cultural story.
Right.
So you might ask them, like, is there anything that you guys took from your cultural autobiographies that connects with African history or the Congo? And there's one narrative I want to raise, women resist war.
Oh yeah,
Christina, her personal story connects with this whole global system of capitalism, but from the ground level up. Do you guys have that same type of experience? Do you see like how your family stories are connected with this? Or
Yeah, so I am predominantly black, of course, but my children is I'm 75% black and 22% European, the rest being Native American. So my European part is mostly Irish, and after seeing what you said, they're seeing how the Irish people, the African people, interacted, and I did more research on that. And I know that my Irish side moved here after the potato famine in mid 1800s. As far as who first came here, I don't know. My great grandmother Katie, she is the most Irish person the far as far as I can go. And she's actually mixed as well. It's because she when she was a little girl, she also happened to see her father who was black, my great grandfather, who like a gate or something because of the spiritual census back in the early 1900s.
and what area is this?
What's in Louisiana?
Louisiana.
Yeah, so either that Mississippi, because half my fans from Louisiana, half my fans from Mississippi, so either between Mississippi Delta or the Bayou. But yeah, she had to deal with that change. So she grew up without a father, not because he wasn't present, but because he wasn't allowed to be present due to the social times and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. This wasn't planned or programmed. I know y'all like this. We got a book for everything, but the Congolese impact in Mississippi and Louisiana is like right there with Georgia and South Carolina in terms of the number of black folks who were brought to the area. We're talking overall. Michael Gomez, I think he talks about the upper end is like 46 to almost 54%. It's 54% for men because there were so many men being brought from Congo and Angola because of these wars.
And slaves, right?
Yes, as enslaved African people from 1502 until 1865 in this country because the slave trade was.
And the last ship was right here in Savannah. That ship came out of Angola. Yeah. And so in that, we found in Savannah, as far as the retention, they have, since we do this African martial art, that they had something called knocking and kicking.
Yes, that's our fight.
Interesting.
Savannah, which is directly connected to what I learned from Angola. So in Brazil, you find these same styles of fighting, which are left, head, elbows, because your hands are sacred. You don't want to hurt your hand, and you don't want to use your hand to hurt. So you use other parts of your body, which in martial arts are actually more dangerous because there's more centrifugal force in your elbows and your shoulders.
Just two smaller points of contact.
Right, but also if you go to the center, what's closest to the center is going to be moving fastest. So your shoulders have more leverage, and your elbows have more leverage. Your knees and your head has more leverage than your actual hand. And this is a lot easier to work.
And that we grew up with it. That's like
so
literally.
when you say that, I thought back to my teacher telling me, because I studied in Savannah, and he said, no, right here, this is where you had the last ship that touched down in Angola. And these brothers, as I'm teaching them this martial art in Savannah, they're showing me, their uncles are showing them this style, which is very similar.
That's right. So I'm Gullah Geechee from Georgetown, a small Gullah community. You know, it's North Santee. Shout out to North Santee, everybody. But that's like very, very few families. But we grew up with that same type of style. The healing traditions with very, very much African but Native American influence. But that fighting style, there were certain things like it was a major offense if you actually hit somebody with your hand on their face or their head.
We got that in California too. I didn't never do it.
Now we can fight. Yeah. We can do a lot of different things, and especially grappling and body slamming. And once you body slam somebody in Gullah fighting, you're supposed to walk it off. You just got your ass beat. Excuse me. Sorry.
It's Congo Unfiltered. You good?
Walk it off. Wow. But if you hit somebody, especially
family member,
but anyone is on their head or their face, then it's like almost like you insulted them, their ancestors, and God. So then now you are going to have enmity between you and that person that you just hit on the head, your Ori, and for generations to come.
Wow.
You have to do work. So we did that, but that connects with the Stonewall Rebellion. When you look at the history of the Stonewall Rebellion, I got to shout out my brother Najee Dorsey with Black Art in America. We're going to have an event on Saturday, next Saturday, Saturday or Sunday. Y'all double check with Black Art in America. But on the Stonewall Rebellion and the legacy of it, those brothers led by Jimmy, and they say it Angolan, but we know if it's Angolan, then it's probably
Congolese, yeah.
So they attacked the storekeepers and the first people who had the guns. They didn't have any guns, but they said in the records, they said they snuck up on them and used stealth, almost a dance. Bro.
Wow.
Yeah.
They disarmed the guards. They took their guns. So these brothers, that's why they stopped. 1739. This is the year 1739, just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. When if y'all take the Bella Geechee class and go on the tours with us, the Camel Ride tours, my partner, my sister, Dr. Corey Claiborne, that's my love, my life partner. She leads this tour. We take you to the locations, to the Stonewall River, and you'll see kind of like that same energy. But anyway, 1739, that rebellion takes place. They were responding to what happened just the year before in 1738. The Spanish in Florida basically sent out a notice, and they put it out to the grapevine. If y'all can get, any African person can get down to St. Augustine, we will give you your freedom. So these brothers, they were connected to a knowledge system that was oral, the oral tradition, and using the drums. The Negro law, so-called Negro law, anti-African code of 1740 and 1741 banned the drums. They banned the drums. They stopped bringing in what they call ethnic enclaves. So they didn't want to bring in a lot of Congolese people who speak the same language, do the same military tactics, and use that knocking and kicking to basically disarm, their oppressors. So everything connects. So the sister then, Woodruff, her book American Congo connects with that whole piece, but everybody connects. Malcolm saw the significance of Congo. Also Garveyite, Brother Wally, you were talking with your family up in Philly. Yeah. When I moved to Philly, I went to Temple University, did my graduate work at Temple University Africana Studies. We studied with a group called the Hasi on Earth in the old Garvey building on Cecil B. Moore Avenue. And that building, that's for the first time I met face-to-face Dr. John Henry Clark. I was able to speak with him, shake his hand. Wow. Philadelphia, man. I think my family connects with that too.
I think there is definitely a lot to learn from the past in terms of being able to organize, and you share a beautiful story that literally showed that connection. And there was also the mention of martial arts and how that has also connection with the motherland. But I also think that there is a lot more to learn from the present, from right now. And the things that we're doing to share knowledge, to organize, to mobilize. I'm not sure if Brother Kito is there listening, but last year in May, President Biden, he was on campus at Morehouse giving a speech. And then something very interesting happened. And I want the folks online to kind of like watch it.
Biden celebrated the next generation of Black leaders here at Morehouse College's commencement, but he also took time to acknowledge the concerns of many young people about his handling of the conflict in Gaza. While the president spoke, several students took their chairs and turned them around, sitting with their backs towards the president in a sign of peaceful protest. The school's valedictorian actually addressed the issue of Gaza head on in his remarks, saying that there needs to be an immediate and permanent ceasefire in this conflict. Now, President Biden also took time to acknowledge the concerns, saying that he respects the right to peaceful protests, that these students need to make their voices heard, and that he is hearing their concerns. And he also tried to talk about what his administration has done to try to secure a ceasefire deal in Gaza. Take a listen.
What's happening in Gaza and Israel is heartbreaking. Hamas's vicious attack on Israel, killing innocent lives and holding people hostage. Innocent Palestinians caught in the middle of all this. Men, women, and children killed or displaced in desperate need of water, food, and medicine. It's a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. That's why I've called for an immediate ceasefire. An immediate ceasefire to stop the fighting. Bring the hostages home.
Now, the president also, during his remarks, said that he's working towards a two-state solution, a moment that drew applause from the crowd, including one of those students, at least, who had turned their back to the president. Now, Biden also tried to use this speech to appeal to Black voters, a key part of his constituency back in 2020, and one that he is trying to rebuild support with amid signs of some erosion in support. The president talked about efforts to try to fight back against white supremacy and racism in this country, while also calling out extremist actions, extremist views that have taken hold among some in the country. The president tried to tout efforts that he has put in place to help Black Americans, like lowering insulin costs, canceling student debt, but it
Brother Kito, if you have a different, oh, there you go. Okay, Brother Kito, if you have a different video, the one on Democracy Now, maybe that will be appropriate, because CNN reported that it was a student protest, but it wasn't, and they also reported that it was about Gaza and Palestine, and it wasn't, because the flag behind. Yeah, I'm gonna let you yeah, go ahead. So, but I just wanted to point out how in that segment from CNN they didn't even mention Congo.
You're right, and that's very common.
Can I ask another question as well? I think Biden's involvement in the extraction of wealth out of the Congo,
Right.
is underscored. It's underreported.
Yeah,
Yeah, he set up the railroad
the
that
beach corridor. Yes,
and in billions of dollars in funding to extract wealth in 30 hours, right?
Yeah.
I think he said he would take it from 30 days to 30 hours. One day I want to get on that train, and I'm listening to it, thinking he's not addressing anything that's happening. He knows what's happening. He knows what
that's American politics. That's what I tell my guys, my students, and I have students with Spelman too. I always say my because I'm mainly at Morehouse, but Spelman students also take my classes. Black Atlanta students take classes, and we emphasize that when you don't see yourself and African people reported, they are doing their white supremacist job to manufacture consent to take our eye off the ball.
Right.
So what we did on that protest, which is now like going on 2 years, I get the time just flies by like that. The students decided that they wanted to protest. We had students who were members of Friends of the Congo and students for justice in Gaza. And so it was joint. So my sister and colleague and comrade, Dr. Tara Taylor, she wore the keffiyeh. She turned her back and raised a fist in defiance of Biden. She's on the clip from Democracy Now. Some of the faculty members were like, I'm not even going to have to be on the same stage with this man because he's a hypocrite just because of what you just said. So they were protesting outside, but I decided that Congo needed to be present on that stage. And the way that we decided to do that was by holding up the Congolese flag, the same Congolese flag that I have in my bag over here. That we'll see.
It's all right.
But we said, okay, and also when we did a protest letter, we wrote a letter. Yeah, you know, no problem. We held it up for the whole time Biden was there. You were holding it up the right way. I was holding it up the wrong way. So my Congolese family, y'all forgive me for that. But we decided Congo needed to be present. I had been misquoted by the New York Times and Washington Post, and I decided that, you know what, there's certain things that you can't misquote. Somebody is holding up, I'm blocking out the American flag with the Congolese flag. And I was very specific with that. My sister, Cynthia Hewitt, Dr. Hewitt in sociology, she came up, she was like, all right, let me help you hold this, whatever. And I appreciated that. I really appreciated it. So we decided to do the silent protests, the faculty vocal protests, and the students.
What was the misquote, if you don't mind me
The
asking?
misquote from the New York Times was that they quoted me as saying that Biden is a nice guy. which was a passing, like 2 seconds out of a 20-minute interview.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's what it, so I said, okay, well, let's quote this. I'm gonna block out the American flag with the Congolese flag. And more importantly, that we show that Congo is present here. Now it's important to put this in context too, because the year before that, September 25th, my daughter's birthday, I should be her birthday. But of 2023, we had honored Dr. Dennis Mukwege with an honorary degree, and we made a commitment that Morehouse would stop investing in companies that were engaged in blood mining. So we got that commitment from the Board of Trustees, but then they were slow to give the honorary degree. And in all honesty, it's still a fight because Morehouse and other HBCUs, there's a corporate aspect to them, and it's up to us, faculty and students, to keep them honest to their real values. And to me, this is the least that we could do was to actually have Congo present in this silent protest. And so that's, yeah, so it was part of a context of us resisting the war in Congo, which is supported by the U.S. through Rwanda, excuse me. And their support of the M23 is complicated, but when you read the stories, the personal stories of people like Sister Justine Masika Bahamba, you see how Congolese women and men, they're fighting for justice. The least we can do, we're using the phones, the least we can do is to stand in solidarity and to support Congolese rights organizations.
I think it's interesting when you said that the New York Times or Washington Post, right, misquoted you, because like I said, that's literally CNN, and not once in that they mentioned Congo, not a single time. They pivoted to Gaza, to Palestine, which you explained the context, but to me it was really interesting that for one, the Congo was not even mentioned.
Right.
That because by mentioning the Congo, you would also mention you mentioned Rwanda, who is involved and has been documented to support M23, but you would also mention the same sentence in the same story, how the U.S. government has been somehow allowing Rwanda to invade the Congo, allowing Rwanda to create chaos in the Congo and have children and women being raped, and the work that you saw that I showed with Dr. Mukwege. But another thing that I also wanted to point out, and I think that's the part of being brave that I wanted to mention, is that you're a black man behind the president of the United States with snipers literally exactly with snipers pointing the rifles toward you guys. And I've seen videos of black men unarmed being shot just by reaching for the wallet. And I think it's very important for me to mention that wanting to grab something that we don't know what it is, only you know, because you know that you're going to do that. The Secret Service, they don't know what you're about to do.
True.
And then having to get up behind the president of the United States and hold that flag, that's courage.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But what was, go ahead, yeah.
So it was courage, but it also was a part of a collective plan. Now, it wasn't all the way planned out. We just said we have to do something. We're gonna have to do something that will resonate around the world, and especially in Congo. And I basically, my plan was I brought in this flag wrapped around my sleeve in my robe. And when everybody stood up, I had taken the flag out just like a couple of minutes before that, put it out, pull it out. And when everybody stood up, that way it's not like, oh, one guy standing up, he's a threat to the president. No, everybody's standing up.
I see.
To applaud him as he gets up. I'm not applauding, I'm like pulling out the flag.
Okay.
So basically I did it. And, in a way that kind of flowed with the ceremony. Our former president had threatened us that if we did anything to protest against the president, that he would shut down the graduation. Students would not receive their degrees. And so Our students also approached us because we were talking to our students. They were like, Doc, please don't, if y'all gonna do something, please don't, make it where we won't get our degrees. So I was like, nah, you know.
Makes
So we
sense.
decided on that part of the silent protest because he said if we say anything. So I'm not saying anything, but yeah, you know, we knew that there was a threat. I was more concerned. I didn't think that they would actually shoot because I'm directly behind him,
Mm-hmm.
and they probably had angles or whatever. But my thing is, I was more concerned with them dragging us off the stage. And if they did, then we would start yelling, Congo must be free.
Yeah.
Goma must be free. Freedom in Goma, guys that are Gasira and the Gullah Geechee culture, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that's the backup, but we didn't have to do that. We just held up the flag.
We have
And some people criticized it. They were like, you should have shouted him down. We should have stopped him.
You need to be smart, and I like what you said. Like you strategize. Like first you're like, I'm going to conceal this flag. I'm going to walk up so that they don't know and they don't prevent me to be on the stage, because you somehow want that voice to be out there. And also you want to be safe, because safety is also paramount. So you inviting your fellow professors to join you into that, so that, like you said, it's a collective effort and you're just not isolated.
I gotta say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Congolese community in Atlanta, Kokomato, and other Congolese formations had held protests, and they received virtually no attention.
Mm.
So this was not just like to be like, oh well,
Single time.
And
Yeah.
No, this is in solidarity with folks, including in Congo, who will receive no attention for the work that they're doing. Dr. Mukwege got the honorary degree, but it's the work of people. And I'm going to say this, Kanzi Hospital, phenomenal work. But Sister Justine Masika Bahamba and other African women, Congolese women, they deserved recognition too. So this was like more so to be in solidarity with them.
Yeah. I guess where I want us to pivot is to kind of like reflect more on, because I was talking about earlier, having to learn from our elders, having to learn as an African person, as a Congolese person, having to also learn from Black movements and how people were able to organize, to mobilize. And you gave a really specific and good example of like what would have been the impact of, for example, being loud on that stage, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you would have been shot quick, but you were allowed to show that the entire time the president was speaking, I believe. And as an African, I always, because early this year I went to this conference in New York, and it was a conference organized by the December 12th movement. Shout out to them in Harlem, all the way in New York, and also with CUNY Palestine. I think that's how you pronounce the university, CUNY Palestine, the university. And I was there on behalf of Friends of the Congo, and I was listening to the different presentation that was being given there. We were honoring Lumumba, Malcolm X, and Frantz Fanon, the centennial. And hearing all these people in the room from across generations and speaking and sharing their stories and how they organized in their time in Harlem. And then I thought back, and when I came back, I watched the movie Selma again, and I started reflecting and asking myself questions, not just as a Congolese person, but as a Black person in America, why we do not organize and mobilize like that anymore. Like, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no cell phones at that time. They were able to like move a system. You want to say something? Yeah.
You're asking why we don't mobilize like we did back then with Black Death Party?
Yeah.
I guess she just, I was talking to my girlfriend a week ago. She's a comparative home studies major. Basically, what she said was back then we were fighting. We didn't do that civil rights at that time. The voting rights didn't pass yet. We had more to win than to lose, but now that we have everything, our answers are fall through us up to this point. Or could be organized like that again. We have more to lose we have so much to gain, but like we have more to lose now because of all the advances we made so far to get in the position that people in the 50s, 60s, people post Civil War have put us in.
Let me push back on that. Let me push back on that a little bit. You also want to say something?
No, I was gonna say.
All right.
I was gonna say. I think.
If you can move, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hello, I'm Zara. I'm a mass media production major at North Carolina A&T. And I was gonna say, well, can you repeat the question?
Like, how come we do not organize and mobilize like the folks in the 60s, the civil rights movement? It seems like whether it is even for Africans, right? During the same time, the same period of time, we saw a lot of African countries becoming independent in the 60s. Exactly, all of them. You don't see that type of organizing anymore. Why?
I think it's
Go ahead.
I think honestly because of our phones, like you're saying, we have more access to it, but because of our phones and because it's so quick, we think like posting, even like in 2020 when it was like with George Floyd and everything, we were posting black
Screen images,
on
yeah.
Instagram, like that was gonna do something. And of course, coming together was beautiful, but what is that doing in person? You know what I mean? And I think we've lost the idea of what community is. And so I think just the phones, like even there's an app called SlideChat for my school. It's an anonymous app. And after, just gun violence, they're like, can we protest gun violence? And someone replied to that, I'm like, why would we do that? We're doing too much. Why is protesting? You know what I mean? I think just phones have taken away from community and just actually going out and doing something for the nation. And also our generation too is afraid of being judged for actually trying and caring too.
It's interesting that you're saying that because I remember 2009 in Egypt, and that's why I think Twitter at the time, I'm not sure if it was nominated, but they were up there for the Nobel Peace Prize because it was used to create a revolution in Egypt. People were communicating through Twitter, now X, right? They would post and say, "Hey, we're gonna meet up at this Tahrir Square and meet there and protest." That with technology advancing, technology should have helped us organize better because now we're closer, right? We have 100 folks right now live watching us. That is 100 plus 100 people watching us live and listening everything that we're saying. Yeah.
So I would say there's a couple of pieces that I would say are peripheral to that, including what both of these young people just said. But I would say also not specifically apathy, that word could work, but a peripheral condition of someone else is doing it. So I know you two, I know Brother Kwame, I know people are doing the work for the Friends of Congo, right? So in my mind, I'm over here doing work in nutrition. So I'm in the community, I have a job to do, I'm gonna do that thing. Even I might feel like I'm doing that by myself sometimes, right? So I might say, hey, these are things that I feel like we could do. So people say, oh, you just make that, I'll get it. Well, so what about your grandmother? What about the people who don't know about this? How come there's not a conversation around nutrition specifically? When we get to the Congo, I think people hear, oh yeah, I know about that. And they'll say that. You say, well, come on, let's go do it. No, they're doing that over there. I saw them.
Isn't that what Project Congo is for?
Right, I saw them, and I saw them on this piece of technology. So when I saw it happen, I was involved in it. There's a mental involvement, but there's a cognitive dissonance. You want to really think about, right? It's like watching a movie. I had this experience, but you didn't do a thing. You saw a thing. And so I think we need to take people away from sometimes seeing things too much and maybe pull them into doing things more, right? There's a conversation, my daughter pulled me here, right? She got the text from Baba Kwame, we're here, right? There's a conversation of doing that's involved with young people saying, hey, it's time to go. Now, if they're not ready, because remember, a lot of our movements they're the organizers, right? We will do it. We might be doing it, but they're gonna, hey, let's go. They got all this energy. Sometimes it's slow down sometimes for something that where you guys going? Because somebody can hype them up in a song, and they're gonna go do something, right? They go to a concert and do it. That's organizing, right? If NBA YoungBoy had an organization, he had a concert. They gave him the key. They gave him a key to the city. NBA YoungBoy got the key to the city. NBA YoungBoy got the key to the city to Atlanta, right? Not how.
NBA Young.
I don't even know who NBA Young is. I'm not. Who's NBA Young? Context. Who's NBA Young? All right.
Can I? I'm sorry, I just want to say, I don't mean it's actually organizing. What I mean is that someone has a message, they have a keynote, they want to say something. You even sing along with it, and they're moving you in a way. And so in that sense, they organized you around some concept, right? And that's what our music has become. And we know how our music has been co-opted.
True.
Right? So what was our music in the 60s and the 50s, right? We had James Brown, we had Aretha Franklin, we had Stevie Wonder, we had Sandra, and they were the music of the revolution. We knew that. And so in order to kind of move that, and I would say, how many songs do we have about the Congo?
Yeah.
How much music do we have about the Congo? How many rappers are rapping about the Congo?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but one thing too, though, and I agree
I'm
with
just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, but what your question too assumes that like everybody in the 60s was like actually on the same page and organizing, when it was a minority, a small, like a really,
Right. My grandfather mentioned that.
you know, it's not everybody was in the movement, but the fact that you had different movements and these differences, and people were like, all right, we're gonna still go forward.
Right.
You know, SCLC, they're very top down. You know, King and Abernathy and the the Southern Christian Leadership Conference taking an idea that they had to lead it. They joined the protest.
Right.
SNCC, under the direction of Ella Baker, I really appreciate the work that they're still doing. SNCC Legacy Project. Shout out to brothers Portland Cox and Josh Myers and folks up at Howard with the SNCC Legacy Project. But their direction from Ella Baker was, no, you organize with the people. You don't have to just do the protests, but you go and get on the ground and start building local political power to the point where, if you look at one of the results of the civil rights movement, Alabama and Mississippi, because of that direct on the ground organizing, had per capita really or more Black political leaders than a lot of other folks. I mean, you know, Atlanta kind of like being an exception, but they benefited from that. But that advice of organize with the people, to me, that's what, without her reading Ella Baker or anybody or hearing that, folks like Mama Justine and other folks like Andre Blouin and other activists, not just in Congo, but they did the work on the ground. So today, I think it's important for us to not necessarily criticize young folks because of the music, because they are given
I'm not
like the temptation.
Yeah.
It's like, but I'm gonna pay you basically to just put out stuff that's not movement.
Well, and it's less criticism, more of acknowledging that a young man who self-admittedly, right? So I've been to jail this many times. These things have happened. You can look at the controversy. You guys know about the controversy around him, and he may or may not have been involved in this thing that happened to this person, right? Someone losing their life. But in a country that is involved in a huge prison industrial complex, you want to glorify the idea of someone who, now I want to be like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was broke with Ice Cube. I'm not. It's not a condemnation. It's an acknowledgement of the fact that if you want to create an archetype for our young generation, and you create it and you misappropriate the idea of what a warrior is, right? And you say, hey, this is what you want to do, and you want to do it this way, which is not too smart if you went to jail 6 or 7 times, right? Then that means that these guys are saying, well, I can go to jail 6 or 7 times and I'll be successful and I can make millions and millions of dollars and get endorsements and all these other types of things, which now you're trapped in a mindset that might lead you all the way, and you're going to end up most likely in a place that is designed for you, you know, a new slave system, right? You find yourself inside of that prison industrial complex as a tool to build tools for a company, right? You'd be a corporate product. And so I'm saying that our resistance has been also co-opted in a bit where we say, hey, I want to do this thing. I'm going to watch it on Instagram. I'm going to watch what you're doing and what you're doing, and I'm going to be a part of it from over here.
Because
Yeah.
the what do you call it? The watches that counts almost.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
like what you did. Yeah, I liked it, and maybe you monetized it in some way. So maybe I'm contributing in that way. But how do we now go in full
Persons like
how
bodies.
how do we get them there? How do we get them to these places? How do we get them like Shaka Bars? How do you get them to the Congo to report back to tell us what's happening? How do I come in contact with you so you can tell me what I need to do here? How do I know? How do I get mobilized here? How does she get mobilized in North Carolina? And that's what you're doing. That's the work that you guys are doing. But a lot of times in those movements, a lot of it's lost because people think they're doing it on the phone. So when you talk about technology and Wi-Fi, I would say I think what's being lost is the fact that our young people and our older people, that we're getting caught up in the idea that we're doing, that you guys are doing, we're looking at you doing, and we're thinking that we're helping by watching.
Yeah.
And we need to pull more people into the action.
So I think that means that we have to really kind of make an invitation known to young folks.
Yeah.
That, like, y'all have great ideas about how to do these things, how to connect with different folks, and we can use it in transformative ways. So that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're doing with the Congo curriculum. You guys are going to have your Congolese partners in Kinshasa or Goma. It used to be in Goma, but now more than likely we're going to be in Kinshasa just because of the turmoil in Goma and Bukavu. But so we're going to use the technology, but try to use it to actually create this network.
Yeah.
And to me, I have to make it very, very simple. To me, one of the most revolutionary books, if not the most revolutionary book, is Walter Rodney, Grounded with My Brothers, updated to Grounded with My Brothers and Sisters, because without those connections, it used to be back in the day, we only had a couple of people who could travel. Now, all of us can connect. So in a way, it's like greater opportunity, but and more information, but you could argue less knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of actually what's happening and how we are in the same boat. But the potential is there. The potential is there. And this is the other thing too. I always tell my students, you can't do everything, but you can do something.
Yeah.
You don't have to do everything, but you can do something. If you know that there's a problem, rape culture in the Congo, there's a problem, white supremacy, you can do something. And then do that thing, and then get ready to do the next thing later on. But it's almost like training ourselves to be long distance runners. Yeah.
Seeing the long picture. And we're using technology right here to make sure that this. So there are those things. So.
And there was something that you said at the beginning that really struck with me, and I don't remember verbatim what you said, but you said something along the line that by seeing what's going on, you can connect, to the system that is oppressing us. Like you look at what's going on in the Congo, you look at what's going on in Gaza, that you can see, wait a minute, that seems familiar to what is happening. And even in terms of organizing, like I mentioned, in the 60s in America, civil rights movement is happening. Black people finally are fighting, and they reach to that point of, yes, we Black, we can vote, we can run for elections.
Went to jail for 3 years after the North Riots for being involved in the North Riots. So
Exactly.
For 3 years as a teenager into his early 20s.
Yeah.
So
and what happened in Africa during the same time, you had the decolonization movement happening with all these countries fighting to become independent. And then what happened? MLK got assassinated here. Malcolm X in Africa was the same thing. They were assassinated, they were being assassinated, they were being killed, and then the movement died. And I think, and I'm going to argue, and then people are more than welcome to correct me, in Africa particularly, ever since the 60s, I have not seen, besides what we're seeing right now, here and there, movements, revolutionary movements happening. But collectively across Africa, I have not seen, since the 60s, movement that is embracing African countries to actually liberate themselves. And in America, same thing. Ever since the civil rights movement, which was something that was designed, and I might be wrong, correct me, that was designed specifically for Black people, like the needs of Black people. I have not seen ever since something that Black people collectively ask and demanded for Black people. I'm not talking about something we're gonna share with other communities, but something just for Black people. You don't see that anymore.
So, and this is where I think where our educational spaces really need to be revolutionized, regardless of what anybody who in Washington is doing or saying. We need to make sure that we're a part of our education is that folks know the history of Pan-Africanism. So that at Morehouse is interesting. They celebrate Du Bois, but Du Bois was our leading Pan-African scholar. I mean, and it's no, you can't pick and choose.
Well, they choose a time period to study.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, but you could argue Du Bois actually tried to do a what I would call a reactionary Darby in 1907, trying to take back what he called a colony of educated Negroes back to German West Africa. He was working with the Germans and all this stuff. Consciousness is really important, and we have to make sure our students understand to think critically that every move is kind of it's good to make some progress, but you also have to think, how is this actually liberating African people? And to see that there have always been movements in Africa. There are different movements. To me, I think if you're working to liberate your country, change the government so it's more representative, it's better for human services, better for labor, that's a progress. That's a step forward. But unless we're actually making the connections and beginning to say, oh, there's a movement in South Africa. We got economic freedom fighters in South Africa. To me, that's closer to my ideology than anything in the Democratic Party or even many so-called progressive groups here. I'll just say it, Black Voters Matter, I love them, but they need to be much more like economic freedom fighters and recognize the importance of Pan-Africanism, the importance of having a socialist perspective too, and pushing back when people say, oh, don't be a socialist, because you got a party out there. And Stephen A. Smith on ESPN going right along with them, talking about don't be a socialist and all this stuff. Unless
you're in Europe.
Unless you're in Europe.
You can only have socialism in Europe.
Right.
Only in Northern Europe, only in Norway and
I would argue, in Black communities, we're closer to a communalist perspective in terms of Bella Vici, we grew food, and you exchanged the food. You gave the food away. You gave it away. You gave pears, grapes, pecans, all these different things. And folks, some people be growing watermelons, bring your watermelon. It's all right, you take this bag of pecans, and it creates an exchange economy.
And we actually had this conversation on the web with my daughter is that there's a conversation around how do you solve a problem that technology has created. And I was saying that, you can decentralize these neighborhoods and have a background in construction and planning. And so it's I had these conversations around how do you develop a neighborhood. And when I was in West Africa, I saw that the communities were all centralized around small businesses. You didn't have these Walmarts and Krogers. You didn't go over here to do your thing. You go across the street and get your bread and your egg, and you go and get your meat, and you go get your tea, and it's close. And someone brings the fish from the ocean. Somebody walks in. You have a market with the okra and the purple peas, and you're not going way out here. You don't have to get in the car if you don't want to.
Yeah.
And so you can create a space where people can see what's happening in their community. Someone's gonna invite you to the house. Hey, come sit down with me. It's already decentralized.
I'm asking students, Sarah, Andre, do y'all see is capitalism kind of with these tariffs? And that's one good thing about Trump. He's exposing all the flaws of capitalism. To your point, Brother Wiley, that is it? Do you think that we can actually make that move to decentralize, to de-link from corporate infrastructures? And I'll tell you, it's hard. I'm right along with everybody else. I go right down to Publix or whatever to get my food.
Just go. Even before we talk about food, gas, electric, water. Go ahead and try to decentralize your water real quick. You can do it. There's ways to do it. They do it in New Mexico. You can collect water, but even legally.
In case it's the term that is uncomfortable because socialism seems to be the new N word. I don't know. America said, call it capitalism or call it democratic socialism. There got to be a better way to think about how wealth is being distributed in this country. I'm paraphrasing what he said.
But in order to do that.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing what he said. So maybe to your question, because you're asking questions specifically to the students, like you can repeat the question for them.
Yeah, if like, what do you guys think about that? Is that something that you see the ability to do, and not just the ability, but if you, because I always associate it with prices coming down too. Because food has less distance to travel. You don't have to pay as much for it. Is that something that you see in your communities? And if so, how does it show up? And can we scale it up?
Yeah. Sorry. All right, you can think.
Oh, can to Brother Wiley's point about creating smaller, decentralized, locally produced food, water systems, and
And if you have those things, you're going to be doing less driving. You're going to spend less on fossil fuels. You're going to have to use less technology. You can link. There's a technology where your phones would be the base for the next phone.
Yeah,
Rather
for the
than
network.
technology,
Yeah.
right? So you have a local network where you can communicate without towers and satellites and things like that. And no.
But so are you asking, I guess to your question, our family has a farm, so I think educating people on how to grow our own food, where to get water, and where it's coming from, especially in Black communities, because we do have a problem with like food. We have fast food throughout our community and causing health issues, and it leads to different things. I think it also is on purpose, but yeah, just teaching and learning and unlearning how to eat and where to get our food from and how to grow it too. I can see that.
Yeah, we raise chickens and goats and, we grow okra and all kind of herbs and foods and things like that. And it, at first, when you start to do that, it feels like, whoa, but how much of this can I eat? How many squash do I have? How many watermelons do I have? How many, whatever I decided to grow from this little seed, and how can I show someone else how to do this, right? So how can we each one teach one in that sense? I think people think it's more convenient, whereas once we buy back our time, it becomes less convenient because you realize how much of your time you don't have. When I talk to old farmers, especially people who've been doing it for a long time, they sitting back. You worked in the morning, 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, or 4 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and then you're done. You might have worked and done all your work, and the day might be over. So you actually have more of your time when you're not having to drive an hour to work and an hour back, type of thing. I think people haven't really taken the time to see what it would look like when it's closer.
I think it's important for like local politics to really say for Congo, in a way, the Congolese diaspora here, and I'm including like us,
Right.
Like African Americans as a part of that Congolese diaspora, we have to begin to see the value of that decentralization,
Right.
Our sense of autonomy, and change our politics so that we actually can allow people. You ask Democrats, most Black folks would vote Democratic Party, but the Democrats quite often go along with this idea of regime change. It was a Republican who assassinated Lumumba. John F. Kennedy, they said, oh, he got the word that it happened, and he was like felt powerless. But Democrats, you have a lot of power, and you can change your politics to actually support Congolese people so that they can actually benefit from their own local economies. And I think we have to take that sense of responsibility in changing our politics. And there's no such thing as just voting local.
Right.
Everything is local, but it's also global.
So then, I just wanted to say,
Yeah, go ahead.
Wouldn't people have to say, or I would say, when people do look and say, okay, I see this human here, I see someone suffering here, this is going to cost me, I'm going to have to pay a fair price for this thing, right? Or this corporation like Apple, who has $1 trillion in fresh cash, right? They have an account with $1 trillion worth of, we don't know what that looks like in value, right? But their company's most valuable company on earth. Now they're directly responsible for these things. And we all have the blue, some of us, maybe we have the blue or the green text on our phone, but we know that what's in here is coming from this suffering. Now, how then do we say, well, you know, what does that look like? Are we willing to? That's the question. What are we willing to do? What adjustments are we willing to make? You know, I think there was adjustments that we made in the 60s. We made adjustments in the 50s, and then you can go backwards, right? All the way back to see how far back we were willing to adjust. And then, as you guys said, going forward, it seems like there was something lost, right? And you said we had more to lose. You know, when my children, when I think about what my children won't have, sometimes I think we have less to lose. Sometimes, if you think about it, because you have to think about what your children are going to be dealing with if you're not willing to lose something now, because there are things like air, water, food, just the heating of the atmosphere. It's the idea that you can remove people and resources from a space, and there not be consequences for that. Even just the hyper dependence on fossil fuels and the idea that we can do these things, all those things have consequences. So when we don't stand up and say something, over time, we lose a lot more than if we did, because we've always been the consciousness. We've been the mouthpiece to say, hey, that's not okay, even if it's not for us.
Yeah. I want to really quick kind of like mention what people have been saying in the chat. Go ahead. On Instagram, Stop Genocide Sacramento say fascism is now affecting white people. Anig Concept Cutie said the guy, that's funny. They said the guy in glasses and white jacket is spitting alongside a guy with a tan hat. And then somebody else said it's been affecting them. It's just affecting them to the detriment so much that they are seeing the dangers all too much right now. Angie Concept Cutie said, yes, they use the word socialism and it should be substitute, and as if it should be substitute for the word Nazis. And maybe I'm going to have you, but I really want the student to also reflect on these MLK Martin Luther King quotes that are paraphrased before, but he says exactly, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth within this country for all God's children, because we see what's going on in Congo, we see the humanitarian crisis, and we can also see the type of oppression that Black folks haven't experienced here in America, brown folks are experiencing in the Middle East. What y'all think about what Dr. King was talking about the distribution of wealth? But Professor, yeah.
I'll try to be as brief as I can. I think democratic socialism is a closer fit to African culture. I would prefer to call that Ujamaa, following Julius Nyerere. You know, we could say African socialism. I think all of those are synonyms for what we want to create. And that's the same thing. What I want for myself is clean air, to be paid for my labor, and to not have my future ripped off by somebody else. And to me, that means that we have to fight against these systems of fascism, which are very, very old and woven into the very structure of this country. So to me, Dr. King is right on point. And, you know, that's the other thing at Morehouse. We don't emphasize that he called himself, he corrected Andrew Young. It's like, Andy, we have a problem because you're a capitalist and I'm a democratic socialist. And to be clear, Dr. King supported Pan-African causes. We literally, if we abandon the telling of our own stories, can wipe out the Pan-Africanism out of our own story. And Dr. King was a part of that. People like Malcolm is the Pan-Africanist in the 1960s. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, and socialist. And so let's be very, very, very clear. So to me, yeah, I fully agree. And that means that we got to stand up at some point in time against these folks and not really worry about saving our lives, our immediate lives. If you are not willing to die for your freedom and to fight for your freedom, then anybody around the planet or right next door can take advantage of you. if I know that you're not willing to fight for what's important to you.
Mhm.
So so plain and simple. I mean, and that's not bravado, but at some point in time, you got is what's willing, what are we willing to fight for?
Mhm.
You know, but
Yeah.
No, go ahead. I mean, that's because we're doing.
Yeah.
I was trying to be brief.
Yes. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up. Mhm. Okay.
And what was the question?
Oh, what
The quotes.
Dr. King's quote: "Call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, but there must be a better distribution of wealth within this country for all God's children."
Yeah, that makes total amount of sense. Capitalism does. I would say we did learn in my sociology class that this capitalism is all about exploitation of the middle and poor class. Yeah, and how it's like this constant. There's a picture you show. I don't know if I saved my phone. But there's a picture of like basically a middle class or poor individual on like a treadmill that's constantly feeding energy to the wealth, but they can never get off it. So basically, they never. They're always on the run. Like that's recent last paycheck. How most people live in not only some how most people live. A good amount of people live in this country, and how you can never really get that step ahead. You're always working.
Before we go to Kai, I want to drop something for later. How does AI affect our ability to even really think about socialism? But Kai, what do you think about that quote, though? I mean, in terms of Dr. King saying that we need a better distribution.
I'm not fully.
I would say that there's not much that's given that isn't, strived for, or as you say, fought for. There's one individual who has I think they said Elon Musk has as much wealth as the bottom 52% of the country. And then there's another statistic that says the 1%, a little bit over 1% of the people have as much wealth as 92% of the entire United States population. And so with just this one person, he has more wealth than over 160, 70 million people. So for King's statement to ring, I believe that there also has to be a generation of wealth, they call intergenerational wealth as well, but also generating or making that as well, because a lot of our input is going into the same places. So we will go and do that thing, and then we'll get that return. But there's another way, even if you decentralize, like let's say you said, oh, I want to make sure that my food, I don't have to go to the grocery store and spend $1,000 a month. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a small co-op, which is where Kwame and I started. That's one of the things that we did is we had a co-op. Let's buy food together, right? Kind of like how Costco does it, right? They make more money they pass it on to their customers. I watch Costco's prices actually go down. I'm not saying I support Costco in that sense, but I understand their model is actually democratic socialism in the sense that the more they buy, the more you save. So the more you guys work with this particular corporation, the lower your prices are. You can decentralize that and put it into a neighborhood. We all buy our food together within a 1 square mile, and we'll only pay 10% of what it would normally cost, right? Because corporate profits are like 30%, middleman 30%. Now you have 60% just at the store. I work in distribution, so 30% is going to be the middleman, 30% is going to be store profits. So that's 60% that you could save just by going directly to the farmer or going directly to the manufacturer of that bread or that canned food or whatever it is that you eat, right? Happen to be vegan. So I could actually get prices down just at 40%. I could pay 40% of what it costs for food just by getting into a co-op, into a socialist framework or structure. And you can, I think simple solutions to complex problems, which is where the bottom line is, which is where our trouble comes in, right? Which is where we put ourselves in danger, right? I say this, I put this idea out there, I'm quiet, I'm over here. Quietly though, if it's important enough, let's say 10 people adopt this, let's say 10 communities adopt, let's say 100 communities adopt, let's say it's adopted across one region, then you have these stores that suffer the consequences of people understanding just in distribution, you have 30% savings. If I can get past the middleman, whatever it's Cisco Foods or US Foods or whatever that company in that truck is, I get past them, I got 30% savings. If I get past that grocery store, and get right to whoever makes that thing that I love, whether it be bread or anything else, I've now saved another 30%. I have within that structure done that thing. You know, I used to sell cars. When I go right to the car, if you go right to the car dealer, you know what the dealer price is. But when I sell that car to a person, same with houses, I wholesale houses. This price of this house that I got before I fixed it was, I felt bad in a sense. I understood gentrification because I understood how they take people's wealth. So I said, I can't do that. You can buy grandma's house for $70,000 and sell it for $300,000. That's unequal distribution of wealth, right? And we have that happening in our communities all the time in so many different ways, from clothes, our phones, our shoes, everything we overspend, our money leaves us. So how can we do what King said is we have to come back and say what's important. What's important to us? We can only get it when you tell us you're going to give us the information. We don't know. If we don't know, how are we going to do something different? All the questions that you pose, okay, let's come up with a solution. The think tank is the solution. They fix the problem by understanding the problem and then coming up with a novel solution.
The economists are saying we're building up to the next bubble. I mean, that right now.
Oh, I'm watching it right now.
You know, we're getting ready to have a serious correction. And when the correction is things are overpriced,
right,
you know, and they're overpriced based upon the inputs, you know, but somebody found different ways to get more wealth out of all these different goods. Bizarre, you want to respond to that? You know, we'll just keep talking, but
No, I'm listening.
no, but we want to hear from you too. What do you think?
Well, just to build on to what you were saying, about the people in poverty on the wheel and working for the wealthy. I think if we had the knowledge, or if, you know, they wanted us to have the knowledge to grow and to be equal, it would dismantle everything that this country was built.
Yeah. It's earlier today with Professor Jovan. We went to Georgia Tech and had a conversation with a few students, and we were talking from a perspective of folks that are calling, because we're talking about the distribution of wealth, right? Folks that are calling to boycott iPhones to kind of support the Congo. And we were trying to push folks to reflect into because Amake said there must be a better distribution of wealth. That Congo right now, or Congolese, they are underpaid. Not just that they're underpaid, but there is also a will to not pay them, and that's why the world, which is allowing us to have phones, gadgets, electronics, is okay to have children working in the mines because they are cheap. Because you don't want to pay the adults like they are supposed to, and even the adult that you're already paying, the adults that are receiving wages, they are not receiving decent wages. They do not have any. What actually is the consequence, or what are the ramifications when you're gonna take away the cobalt, which is one of the primary sources of income of Congolese people? I'm not even gonna talk about the country, but the people. You're gonna take that away before you even think about how can you criminalize companies that buy from smelters that are using kids in the mines. How are you going to talk about boycotting before you talk about imposing workers' rights for all these companies that are buying cobalt, tungsten, copper, right? Why not fighting so that human rights, workers' rights for Congolese people to have a decent wage, to have health care, to have health benefits, to have decent wages? Why can we talk about that before we talk about boycotts? Because when you boycott cobalt, when you boycott iPhone, then what do? You're only going to export that same injustice, that same way of oppressing people, because you just want to extract from them elsewhere.
It's Band-Aid thinking in a way, even though I support boycotts when needed. I think we need one against Israel, against Rwanda. You know, those we need to go to the source of the subject.
The source, exactly.
You know, Apple is the middleman, but and it's in a way it's like, okay, let me put this Band-Aid on a system that keeps breaking my arm, your arm's still gonna get broke. But you have to literally change that system. There are different innovations like Dell back in the 2010s, and other companies developed a way of actually tracking. It's like every single bag of cobalt or every single bag of coltan, tantalum that came out of the ground, they could trace where it came from so that you could actually prevent and sanction like slave labor being used. Now it's women and children, so I mean, there are different things we can do, but at the same time, if it came down to it, where we basically said, okay, I always think about it, it's almost like whack-a-mole. If you boycott Apple, Samsung is going to benefit, and you still want to keep capitalism going to keep moving. But if we have to stop band-aid thinking, we have to actually.
And why boycotting iPhone but not Samsung,
right,
for example, right? Or your laptops, right?
But it's the countries that, and we got to say too, Congo has to fight for itself.
Exactly.
There's a policy that the United States government has had for a long time that going along with the United Nations, no arms sales in the Congo. Congo needs to be able to defend itself from rebel incursions and all this other stuff.
100%.
Basically, it's like, could you imagine Ukraine saying that, oh, well, yeah, we don't need any arms because, we trust Russia. No, they're asking for Tomahawk missiles, long-range strategic missiles to fight against. What is Congo doing? And I'm not blaming Congolese people. I'm blaming the government.
Yes,
of Congo,
100%.
Basically, I'm saying.
Well, we know
Congo Unfiltered. Correct. And who put them in place?
Yes.
With no legitimacy, with no. Yeah.
Congolese people didn't necessarily vote this government, and and we saw it. When Congo used its old fighter bombers to actually attack M23, they had to get their behind to the negotiating table. And
they were forced.
Again, to the point, if you don't fight for your freedom, if you're not willing to fight for your freedom and still respect the rights of your people, then anybody's going to take advantage. So we have to help change some of these policies here in the States too. So to the point, Friends of the Congo advocates, works with mining labor organizations, unions. We work with these different organizations. So joining in and actually, beginning working with that Friends of the Congo process will, I think, help as well.
And I wanted to speak on something that was said probably 30 minutes ago, which is when you said that there was no coverage for the things you had to say. They misquoted you, but then the rest of the protest was not covered. And so we have to do more with the technology to bring light to the fact that these things are happening across the board. When they post, they're watching, right? To bring more awareness to it, we're aware of what's happening in Gaza because of the frequent posting and repost. We need to do more and more of that with what we want to happen in the Congo as well as what's happening in the Congo. So saying, hey, this is happening, this is what we need to happen. So as you said, how do we set up workers' unions? How do we set up fair structures so that we have the technology? It's not being exploited, but we're benefiting from the trillions of dollars that are in the earth. You build up an entire nation or an entire region, an entire continent with the resources that are there, except for like my family's from Jamaica, where you have bauxite just being exported from Jamaica, from ports, with no value added, right? So we know if we build these systems, and I think as we build more and more systems, because as Blacks and as Africans in America, we still need to build systems. We need to build manufacturing. We need to build, workers. We have those similar struggles, similar structures. We saw what happened to Detroit. It's gone. I went to Detroit. It's burned out. And that's we have similar issues. We have the things. We have the tribal war, right? We see it in the Congo. It's accentuated. So, but I grew up in gang culture. I grew up with Bloods and Crips. I grew up with friends getting shot. I grew up with rape culture and things happening to my sisters and to my aunties and us, right? But we push it over here. Oh, that's cognitive dissonance. Oh, that's not happening to us. We got a nice car and we have some nice, but we don't see that the same thing that's happening to us is happening here. That what happened to us is happening here. There's more beginning here. There's more that raw slavery. We're at the other side of it, where our cousins and our brothers and our sisters and our uncles are getting locked up and enslaved, right?
Yeah.
Just to that same point.
Yeah, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Oh, okay. Just
Yeah.
real quick.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's just a anecdote, but it brings to this point the difference between the way that Europeans see the world, white folks, and the very domesticated way that we see the world.
Right.
I'm in France, being my lady, Dr. Claiborne, checking into this hotel in Paris. Guy who's checking us in is German. He's living in France, talking to us about how he owns property in Detroit and in Atlanta, burnout property. The Europeans, good, bad, or indifferent, they see the world as theirs.
Mm.
Right.
We have a more modest perspective, but we have to also develop a global perspective that looks at how we can actually benefit from helping people who are fighting for their own rights.
Yes.
And it's not like I'm benefiting, like I'm just trying to make a buck. No, if Congolese women and children are healthy and safe, I'm healthy and safe.
Right.
Because that's how I was raised. First of all, that's the most important thing.
Right.
And that I didn't get that from Christianity. I didn't get that from Hinduism. I got that from Black Gullah Geechee people who basically will tell you, you look out for your neighbors.
Yeah.
You're not in this alone.
Right.
So that thing I think is really important, that whatever we have to do, that's why I push my students. And it's really good that we get two generations of Morehouse students talking to each other.
Right.
And just kind of like seeing and just letting you guys know, that's it, guys. I'm sorry, it's all right. You know, it's like that y'all are not alone. We see you in the work that y'all are doing, and we appreciate you. And we're trying to like literally pour and support a foundation that y'all can build and step up on and do what you got to do, because y'all, the future is in your hands. I'm not done yet. I'm 56. I'm still got some kick in me.
50 years.
Hey, bro, I cannot believe you are looking young
No,
enough.
thank you. I got 50 plus years.
Oh, that's right.
Uh,
Oh my goodness, 99, what, 98 or 97?
there you go.
I forgot exactly.
We got time.
All right,
Yes.
thank you, Brother Gaitan, for the work that you're doing, man.
No, thank you to all of you. And I think what you said really sums up everything in terms of solidarity. Like, to me, just from a perspective of Black liberation movements here in America, fighting for Black struggle, what it will mean, because we've seen it in the 60s, but what it will mean in 2025 or 2030 if there is that alliance among struggles, that we are going to support our brothers and sisters in Africa to liberate themselves. But what that liberation will mean for Black people here. Can you imagine a Congo liberated that is understanding the struggle of Black American and investing? Because we see countries doing that. The US investing into other countries when they're fighting for what the US, from the US foreign policy perspective, call democracy, right? Human rights. Like, money pours into those countries, money pours into organizations in the Middle East, in Africa. So can you imagine if money could pour from Africa to the
That's right.
Black American communities
That's right.
to help them?
And it's happening. I mean, it has the potential to happen with the Grand Renaissance Dam. They're going to be exporting power to other African. It's not just Ethiopia.
Right.
That has to be the model. We had a class of leaders like Malcolm X and Dr. King and Patrice Lumumba, who came to the United States in 1960 and literally was like to African American students at Howard and other HBCUs, hey, come home to Congo and help us build this country. But we have to teach those stories. And along with Andre Blouin, the work that she was doing.
Yes.
Last thing, I'm gonna do a shameless plug.
Yeah.
We're working on a book project. The book project is not even as important as the conversation around it. It's called Centering 1526, the Gullah Geechee Origins of African American National Imagination. The book is in, like, we're literally writing it now, but we're also planning a series of conversations, and we want this to be between Congolese, Angolan, Senegalese, Ghanaian, any African nation that actually wants to engage in a conversation about this pivotal year, 1526, when the first 100 Africans were brought to this country. Not the beginning of our history, but it's the beginning of our sojourn in enslavement. What was happening in Congo? What was happening in the Songhai Empire? What was happening with the Swahili states in Ethiopia? It's like this is a pivot, this is a turning point that would lead us 500 years later, where we're reeling and looking back at like, well, what happened to us? Now we have to ask the question, what happened to us? But what do we want to do with the next 500 years? So we need to use history in a truly Sankofa way, look backward to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's the main thing. Century 1526, remember when the book comes out? And if y'all want to engage in the conversation, Brother Gaitan, I know that we're going to be able to work with you.
Yes,
and actually
definitely.
Have those conversations.
There was someone in the comment that said that they would like you to teach them because you sound like Fred Hampton. And you, I'm gonna say, enroll to Morehouse, come to Morehouse College, and take the class, and he will be teaching you. But folks, it's Congo Week. For us, it has started, and we started today. We kicked off this weekend today. A lot of quotes, good quotes. Kim Pravinta right here, which really great. A woman was burned at the stake for her resistance against colonial oppression. There was also, before I showed André Blouin, which was discussed here, mentioned, and she said that I want Africa to be loved. I speak of my country, Africa, because I want her to be known. We cannot love what we do not know. Knowing comes first, then love follows. André Blouin was actually, inner circle of Patrice Lumumba, even though she was not Congolese, she was from Guinea. And it was really interesting to see that solidarity at that time. We can help you achieve liberation. We can help your people. And she was in a inner circle. So when obviously they arrested Lumumba and then they killed him, assassinated, they murdered him, they made sure that she was also under arrest, under home arrest, and then kicked her out. And of course, there was also Patrice Lumumba himself. That says that the day will come when history will speak, but it will not be the history which will be taught in Brussels, Paris, Washington, or the United Nations. Africa will write its own history, and in both North and South, it will be a history of glory and dignity. I think we spent almost 2 hours speaking. Thank you all for watching, and I guess that what you can leave when you log out or when you leave this room, that you understand that the solidarity that we are talking about, that we spent almost 2 hours speaking, wasn't just a feeling. It is a practice. It is an action, and how that comes depends on your capacity to show up and show and show solidarity. It's really the decision that you make to see yourself in that struggle, like Brother Wally, you mentioned. See yourself in the struggle of the other person. Another person in another continent, in a different neighborhood, in a different country. And that's also what Pan-Africanism is, or has thrived to be, because it was never just an idea born of like any sort of like powers or anything, but it was an idea born out of spaces like this, with people from different continents meeting, talking, and figuring out, okay, we have the same struggle. We are undergoing the same oppression. How can we collectively work to liberate ourselves? How can we help each other? How can we show up in solidarity for each other? So, no classrooms will obviously teach us this, right? So we need, now it was said, we need to be able to take ownership on even that education system, so that what we teach to our kids, what we teach to people, is a reflection of what we are actually going through. Because they're not going to teach you how to end fascism or white supremacy in college. They're not going to teach you that. And if you try,
in Black liberation movements, we're gonna try to teach.
yeah, and if you try, you might get some, you get resistance, but you need to push through. And now there was a call for students to also participate and register for the Black Liberation Studies, you said?
Black liberation movements, African Studies 200. It's required in the major.
Mm-hmm.
But let me be quiet. I don't,
Oh no, I want you to say that what you're saying is actually that. But yeah, so really the idea behind it is to rise together, like all of us. So remember that the story that we share about the Congo, about other places in America, was not and should not be a distant history or a distant story. That it should also reflect really the unfinished work of freedom of our elders. So all I can say, there was a barcodes on top left. You can scan this and you'll be able to know what's going on in terms of activities and events for Congo Week. We are just getting started. It was Gaetan, and it was a pleasure to be with you. I will see you next weekend. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, bro.